recall the time they found those fossilized mosquitoes, and before long they were cloning DNA. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, hey, Jurassic Park from Weird Al Yankovic is now stuck in the webmaster's head. I'm Deconverted Man, and today we're going to look at a video that asks the question, does God exist? And says, reasoning from a creationist point of view. Oh, reasoning and creationists go together as well as military intelligence. Anyways, okay. I'm making fun of them. I'm making fun, a little bit of fun. Look, you can be a creationist and still have reasoning for other things, but not for anything scientific or anything like that. Because as a creationist, you have to just ignore reality in regards to, I don't know how much of science, but a lot of it. You start with the conclusion that everything is created, and then you say, well, everything is created. Creator, of course, your creation requires a creator. This is the thing of all creationists, essentially, and usually they deny biological evolution, and sometimes they deny cosmology, but sometimes they're okay with the Big Bang, but not the age of the universe. It just depends what flavor they have. But maybe he has actual reasoning for a God. Maybe he has a valid and sound argument for God. Maybe he has empirical evidence or a repeatable test for God. And maybe I'm made out of gold and lobsters. Anyway, so let's check it out.
Hey friend, and welcome to this channel. Today we're going to answer the question, does God exist? And this channel that I have, it's all about Bible, prophecy, apologetics, and evangelism. So if these things interest you, as well as this question, this is the channel and the video for you. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Does God exist? We're going to answer the question here today from a...
Does God exist? I don't know. Depends what God is. So, what is God? And more importantly than what is God, how do you know that God is the thing that you're going to tell me what God is? What was your epistemology? And you say from a creationist point of view. So, of course, your answer is going to be yes. Anyways,
creationist standpoint. There have traditionally been four basic arguments used to prove God's existence.
they're all bad.
They're called the cosmological, ideological, axiological, and ontological arguments.
And every single one has one or more logical fallacies. Are you just going to give us the same old arguments? You're not going to do anything new? Oh, man. I was hoping, like, you'd have, like, a creationist argument. Something new. No, it's just the same old, same old. All right, I guess I'll go over why the arguments are flawed then. Here we go. All right.
And so we're going to answer the question, does God exist from a creationist standpoint? The argument from creation. The basic idea of this argument is that since there's a universe, it must have been caused by something beyond itself.
Why? Why must it be beyond itself? And how do you get to that conclusion? Well, you just did. Yeah, don't worry about it. It just is. Okay.
It is based on the law of causality, which says...
Okay, so the law of causality isn't a law, not in any, like, where do you get the law of causality? Is that really like a law? Like, is it? I mean, kind of. I guess it is kind of a law. Maybe it is law. All right. But also, maybe not. Scientifically speaking, laws are reserved for facts about the universe that we know. And if the law of causality is one of those things, along with all the other laws that we observe, it applies to what we have observed, which is about 0.0000 some odd 1% of the universe. A very tiny, tiny bit of the universe that we have observed. So we don't know about anything beyond that. So although it's reasonable to say that cause and effect, at least locally, seems to be the case, we can't really say anything about anywhere else in the universe. Maybe cause and effect doesn't occur other places. But absolutely, we would have to say that if we go back towards the beginning of the universe, if the word beginning even makes sense, but if we go to the early universe, the amount of heat and energy certainly would have some effect on the laws of physics as we know them. And to illustrate that, I've got some actual citations from websites. Yay, websites that talk about stuff. Now, this is Big Think. Now, they're somewhat scientific, and they're not, maybe they could be wrong about what they're saying. It's possible. But, I think that they're probably, they probably thought about this. They probably have good stuff about this. They're probably fairly correct. So it talks about the Big Bang and all this stuff, and so what I find interesting is, it talks about how things are now, and then it says we've got all these uh, particles that obey certain rules. They have masses. They have internal energy, and then when corresponding matter antimatter pairs collide, they spontaneously annihilate, and then they produce massless photons. And when you smash together two particles, you get more energy, and so on. And we got E equals mc squared, and all these cool things going on. And then they say things were sure different early on. At extremely high energies, we find in the earliest stages of the Big Bang, every particle in the standard model was massless. The Higgs symmetry, which gives particle massless when it breaks, was completely restored at these temperatures. It's too hot not only to form atoms and bound atomic nuclei, but even individual photons and neutrons are impossible. The universe is a hot, dense plasma filled with all the particles and antiparticles that can exist. So at that point, and I just realized that's way too small to see on screen. Dang, nabbit. Uh, well, the links are in the description, so you can see it yourself on the actual website. So things were very, very different. So, given that the laws of physics regarding, say, the law of causality, if indeed it's an actual scientific law or not, I'm not entirely sure about it because, like, I didn't see that it said it was pure science. It looks like it's like a convenience sort of word, but whatever. I'm not gonna. It's silly to quibble over. I'm gonna quibble over it anyways. But yeah, uh, um, so things were very different. So E equals mc squared, is that true of the early universe? I don't know. It doesn't say it is or isn't. But it does say things are very different. So would the law of causality still be in effect in a very, very different universe? I don't know. And more importantly, he doesn't know. And I dare say perhaps nobody knows. Perhaps one day we will know, but right now we don't. Now, also from CERN, who definitely is a scientific website. Well, um, they talk about the Big Bang and all this, and then they talk about the there is a thing called that we think is that we've labeled dark matter, and it doesn't emit light or electromagnetic radiation of any kind, so they can only detect it through gravitational effects. And then they have a mysterious form of energy called dark energy, and they think it accounts for about 70% of the mass energy context of the universe, and even less is known about it than dark matter. And this idea stems from the observations that all galaxies seem to be receding from each other at accelerating pace, implying that some invisible extra energy is at work. Now, we could be wrong about that, and maybe this label will change, and who knows. But could it be that dark matter and or dark energy don't have any cause and effect in the way that other things do? I don't know, because they behave differently than other stuff, and we don't know that much about them. So it's possible. All right, then of course we finally have this cool little thing we've all seen about. This is kind of like a visualization of the Big Bang, and so right about here, where everything kind of goes dark, right? There's like nothing there, and then you've got all this stuff with quantum fluctuations and inflation going on, and all the microwave background, all this stuff. And what the bleep's going on? Don't know. Don't know. Bleep and don't know. And so, yeah, it might be that we have cause and effect, but at some point we don't. And maybe right there at the very tip is when we don't. Have no idea. None. We don't know. We don't know what it's like because, well, standard physics doesn't apply to the early universe. And the model that you would have to construct would be based in mathematics. And unless you have a peer reviewed paper on the mathematical model that you've made of the early universe that shows the cause and effect is occurring in the early universe, I don't want to hear about your stupid cosmological argument anymore, because you don't know, and I don't know, and nobody knows if it is consistent into the past. It is performing a logical fallacy known as parts of the whole. Well, that's one version of it. And the whole fallacy is called, what the hell is it called? Fallacy of composition. There it goes. All right. So yes, uh, just because things in the universe behave a certain way, that doesn't mean the whole universe behaves in that way. And I would say it also is committing the fallacy of, well, an appeal to ignorance, an appeal to the known. Well, the appeal to the known is not a fallacy, but it could be. It could be. It's not though, but it's not. Just ignore that part. Okay.
Is that every limited thing is caused by something other than itself. And there are two different forms of the argument, so we will show them and delve into them separately. The first form says that the universe is needed, basically needs a cause. The first form of the argument requires that the universe has to have a cause for its.
Yeah, and like I said, we don't know that that's the case, that it needs a cause. It might not. And so anything after that premise then is going to be flawed, because you're basing it on an unknown idea, an unknown proposition. At best, if you formulated this as a hypothetical syllogism, said if the universe has a cause or if the universe needs a cause, then whatever, then yeah, okay. But we don't know that if. But you're not formulating it as a hypothetical, and because of that, you're going to incur multiple logical fallacies.
Beginning. The second form of the argument basically argues that it needs a cause right now to continue to exist. So there must be reason for the world to come into existence as well as for its continued existence. And this is what we're going to delve into. Now,
Uh, what is maintaining the universe? Is that what you're asking? Well, it's not being maintained. It's running down. Entropy is taking hold. So entropy is constant. So right now the universe is pretty darn chaotic, but it wants to relax back into a state of entropy, which means everything will slow down, everything will cool down, everything will stabilize into stillness, and then it will be at absolute entropy. What happens after that? Who knows? Uh, that's in some million, trillion years from now. So not anything to really worry about necessarily, but certainly a problem to figure out for future generations of spacefaring creatures that might still exist.
Now, as a creationist and Bible believer, I believe that Paul elucidated this creationist principle that we can argue from creation the existence of God from Romans chapter 1, verses 19 to 20.
Ah, jeez.
Paul said that all men know God.
And Paul was wrong because not all men know God. And all I have to do to show that, well, I am your example of somebody that does not know God. And I'd also have to turn to the Piana people whose name I continually cannot, hopefully, ever pronounce. But yeah, the whatever, they're them, these dudes, they don't know God. So yeah, there you go. These guys didn't know God, and they didn't understand what God was when the guy came and he tried to tell them about God. They thought he was just ludicrous, and so they definitely didn't know God. They didn't have a concept of God. They had no creation story. They had no myths like that. So you're wrong, and Paul was wrong, and I don't care what Paul said because Paul was a lunatic, anyways. He thought he saw Jesus. Now, maybe somebody knows the answer to this question. I haven't looked it up. After Paul saw Jesus, like, what is there to prevent somebody else from claiming that they saw Jesus and then preaching stuff? Like, was Paul the last person to have Jesus show up? Like, why would Paul be the last? Does it say that in the Bible? I don't remember. Anyways, yeah, so I don't care about Paul. Anyways, all right. What do you got?
Because it's made evident to them through creation, where in creation, God's invisible attributes have been made manifest. His
Don't you mean the invisible man attributes have been made seen, which is, well, I guess that's one version. Yeah, but you can't have something invisible be made manifest, otherwise it's not invisible anymore. But why play this game? I don't see God in the thing that you're labeling as creation, which you shouldn't because that assumes your conclusion. I don't see it. So it's not plain, and plenty of people don't see it. And some people see a different version of God, so radically different than your version of God that, like, you're like, well, but it's still God, but it's such a different God. Like, the Hindus have a bazillion gods, but they also have this idea, like, of God opening and closing its eye, and that's what's making all of reality happen. And that's very different than the Yahweh version of God. So they're not clearly seeing God then, if they're seeing different versions of God.
eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through that which has been made. So all creation talks about its creator. Plato, he's actually the first thinker known to have developed an argument based on causation, and Aristotle.
And Plato was wrong about pretty much everything Plato said. Aristotle was right about some of the things, but not all the things. I hate Plato. Screw Plato.
Followed. In Christian thought, Augustine, Aquinas, and Anselm, and Descartes, and others have, to this present day, have been showing valuable information and value argumentation based on creation.
Well, Augustine was the first, and he invented apologetics to try to argue using logic because the atheists were using logic. Now, at his time, less was known scientifically, so maybe for his time, those arguments seemed pretty good. But now we know a bleep ton more about science, and we can pretty much throw his arguments out. But even then, I think that his arguments would have committed a numerous amount of fallacies that you could have easily labeled even without knowledge of science. Uh, so I'm not impressed by any of this. And also, why does creation have to yell out that well, you're labeling it creation, but why does it have to, like, hey, there's a creator? Like, why can't the creators just say hi? Like, why can't the creators just be evident? Why is it this hide and seek game where it's like, I'm gonna leave clues that I exist, but I'm not just gonna tell you outright? Well, I'm gonna tell some people outright, but not today. Like, that's just ridiculously silly to me. It could still be true, but why? Why do it that way? It's so ridiculous. Like, there's millions of people around, and you've got like what 33% are Christian. So the rest of the world's all screwed, and not even and some percentage of those Christians are also screwed because they believe in the wrong version of God, and God's just sitting there like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. They'll figure it out. Well, they didn't figure it out. That's fine. Whatever. Yeah, it's all good.
Now, the universe was caused at the beginning. This argument says that the universe is limited and that it had a beginning and that its beginning was caused by something beyond the universe. It
Yeah.
can be stated this way in three points. The first point would be that the universe had a beginning, right?
Well, it didn't really, like, it gets complicated because when time starts, like, is that a beginning of time? Kind of, I guess, but also not. It's really like the language just fails at that point. I don't have the right verbiage to use, and neither do you. But this is non-scientific anyways, so whatever.
As I just shared with you. The second point would be anything that has a beginning must have been caused by something else.
All right, so the universe doesn't have a beginning, so it wasn't caused by anything else. Okay. And of course, God doesn't have a beginning because reasons. And why is God beginningless? How is it that you have anything beginningless? Can you give me an example of something that is not God that is also beginningless?
And then the third point in this argument would be that the universe was caused by something else, and this cause was simply God.
Yeah, that last part really fails hard. It's caused by something else. Magic. Time travelers. Aliens. No, no, no. Bigfoot? No. God. Oh, okay. Sure, why not? Yeah, nice story. No, the argument is flawed. Like I said, it has the compositional fallacy. It begs the question in the way that you phrased it. Uh, um, and it also relies on an appeal to ignorance and a god of the gaps. So, yeah. Um, Pretty much your whole argument sucks. Moving on, I guess.
In order to avoid the conclusion that this, everything came into creation or came to be through God, to avoid it, some people say that the universe is eternal and it never had a beginning. It just always existed.
You don't even really have to go that far. Reality always existed. That's for sure. So, okay, the maybe the universe had a starting point, uh, but before that, there isn't a before because there's no time. So reality simply is. Reality is uncaused. Reality has always been. So reality made the universe. Don't need it to be God. It could be reality. Accepting your argument, which I shouldn't, but tentatively granting this argument for the sake of argument, reality made the universe because it did. And maybe it couldn't help it. In fact, maybe the universe is a brute result of reality being real. There you go. But I don't need to say anything about the universe as far as it always existing or anything like that. I could just go to reality itself. So you're wrong.
Right? But we have two ways to answer this objection. The first, and the scientific evidence supports the idea that the universe had a beginning. The consensus of scientists studying the origin of the universe is that it came into being in a sudden, cataclysmic way.
What's so interesting with creationists is they're all fine and dandy to use scientists when it suits their needs. But does this guy accept biological evolution with modification and descent via natural selection? Because that's the majority of scientific science agrees with that as well. If so, why? So if you're not okay with science in one part, but you're okay with science in another part, you're just inconsistent. Why? Because reasons, right? Because it doesn't suit your narrative. Um, do you also agree that the age of the universe, according to science, then 13 billion years old, and the Earth is 4 billion years old? Do you agree with that? Well, 4.54, but whatever. 13 point some odd billion years. No, you don't. So probably, I would assume. So you only agree with science when it suits your needs. I already know that. You're not going to answer the question. If I ask you the question in text, you're not going to answer it. I already wrote by reasoning of being a very bad argument. Hey, here's a question you will never answer. Are you also accepting science that says biological evolution is a thing? Or is it just when you like science that you agree with it? That last part's a loaded question. I should get rid of that part. Yeah. Look. All right. There we go. All right. Anyways. All right. Back to. Oh, and he's got glasses on, so his God screwed him up. Don't know why.
This is called the Big Bang Theory. So there must have been some sort of Big Bang that brought everything to existence.
No. That's actually that demonstrates you don't know what the Big Bang is. If you think it's an actual bang, you already don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So you're done. From this point on, anything you say about cosmology is rendered invalid. If you said it's a bang, you're wrong. That's not what it is. It has that label, but it doesn't have a bang. Expansion. It's different than a bang, you moronic nitwit. Look up Big Bang next time before you start talking about it. You don't know what you're talking about. So, yeah, okay.
And most scientists agree that there had been some cataclysmic event that started it all. So the question
Citation required for cataclysmic event, but okay, whatever.
is, well, what preceded the cataclysmic event? Because
Nothing, because there wasn't any time or space. So there wasn't anything that preceded it. There isn't a thing there. It's not nothing. It's not even that. It's just there isn't. So, yeah, I don't know how that works either, but I'm not a cosmologist.
there had to be something that put in motion the Big Bang,
There
right?
just had to be.
So that's the point. There must be a creator who initiated this big creation.
It didn't start big, it started really small. Or it could just be reality itself that made things go. Okay, whatever. Yeah. All right, broken arguments broken.
You remember in Genesis chapter 1 that
I
God
don't care what Genesis says.
spoke and everything came into existence.
Okay, so God spoke. So I have problems with this. Is there atmosphere? Does God have vocal cords? Because unless there's an atmosphere and God has vocal cords, how could it speak? You need an atmosphere to speak in, and you need vocal cords to speak. So, if not, then it's got to be that he didn't speak, which means the Bible's not being honest in what it tells us. And if the Bible's being dishonest, then we can't trust it. So either God has vocal cords and there's an atmosphere where God is, or the Bible is lying. Which is it? It's like, yeah, let me know. Yeah, I just, you need in order to have sound, you have to have a medium for it to pass through, and in order to produce sound you need something to produce sound. Well, maybe God didn't have vocal cords. He had some other thing that allowed it to speak. I whatever that is, but you'd still need a mechanistic force that was able to produce sound waves. What language would it have been, by the way, that God was using? just out of curiosity. Like, what would it be, the earliest version of speech ever? Like, because humans didn't develop language for quite some time. So, like, the earliest language was clicking that we came up with, more than likely. You know, that sort of stuff. Um, so did God just go, and that's what made the universe? Because it said, "Let there be light." That's like a full sentence. Did God use Hebrew even though it hadn't been invented yet? Did he use the older version of Hebrew, or did he use modern Hebrew? What language is God speaking? Can you tell me that, please? How does this work again? How does any of this work?
Since over a span of 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested, God rested. So over a span of 6 days, there was a big creation event, a big cataclysmic, you could say, bang of creation. And yeah, the Bible tells us that, yeah, there was a cataclysmic creation account. Everything
Um,
kind of came into existence suddenly.
well, the Bible says that God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, which is absolutely incoherent given that light needs some sort of source. So, if you think it's a bang, I guess that's what you're thinking the bang is all that light, which still doesn't make sense. Uh, certainly there'd be heat. Uh, Heat can produce light as a side effect, I suppose. But then God would be saying, "Let there be heat," and then light as a result of heat. Or, well, God said, "Let there be light," but the universe knew that it needed heat to generate the light. How does this work again? The universe just knew what God meant, or did God know what it meant? Like, it didn't matter that God said, "Let there be light," which was factually incorrect. When what he meant to say was, "Let there be a lot of heat," and that's what started it. You know, uh, how does this work?
The second law of thermodynamics says the universe is running out of usable energy. Okay, the universe is running out of energy. That's the point.
Yeah,
So
that's
if the universe
entropy.
is running out of energy, everything would be depleted and gone, but everything is still running. So the point is that according to thermodynamics, everything is running down, but in order for everything to be running down means that something would have had to been run up. Everything would.
Okay, so here's the thing with that. Okay, so if you want to have an infinite universe into the past, well, it's actually very easy. You have an antimatter universe, and that universe has always been running backwards from our point of view. From its point of view, it's not. Okay, if you lived in an antimatter universe, you would be living forwards in time. But that forwards in time to you is backwards in time to us. Okay, I guess I'll have to draw a thing in MS Paint to illustrate what the bleep I'm talking about. And even then, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that great of a job because I'm not a scientist, and definitely this guy isn't either. Let's see. Yeah, that works. Oh, I could have just done the triangle easily. Oh, well, I'm stupid. All right. All right, let's see. Present screen. Where's the thing? Da, da, da. Okay, so here we go. All right. So, let's make you green and let's make you red. Okay. So, um, so we got minus, 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 minus. So we got, let's see, five, four, let's see, one. So 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 1, 2. All right. Yeah, man, I'm an artist. Look at this. It's beautiful. Oh, it's so great. Etc. Dot dot dot. Infinity. Positive. Etc. Dot dot dot. Infinity. Negative. So you have a universe basically. Well, I can't draw infinity anymore. Okay. Uh, well, infinite in a sense. Infinite for a while. So it's almost infinite. We'll say that. Okay. But basically, you have a universe that's running backwards in time in relation to how we perceive time. But as far if you lived in that universe, you would experience time in a way that made sense. Like it doesn't to you, it doesn't look like it's running backwards. It's only from our position, if we could see it, would it look like it's running backwards. But from their position, we would be running backwards to them. So that's the relation of antimatter universe to a matter universe. And by the way, our matter is their antimatter and our antimatter is their matter. So from their perspective, we're the antimatter universe. Labeling one as antimatter and the other as matter is kind of a almost a lost cause in a sense. But we'll do it for sake of convenience. But at any rate, you basically you have an infinite universe that's running uh, um, into a state of complete equilibrium here, which is entropy, complete entropy, at which time you have time itself basically is nothing, and so is energy, but that state is unstable, and because of that unstability, it makes another universe which now runs contrary to the previous universe that led into it. So you have energy flowing from negative energy, and then you have when that energy gets to an equilibrium, then the next one that starts again is a negative energy from that. And so you have an infinite universe because, well, technically you had two universes, but they're tied together. Now, if you're wondering, like, what the hell am I talking about? Well, I kind of only sort of know what I'm talking about, and barely at that. And if you want to know more, you're going to have to look at, like, the scientific hourglass universe theories that are out there that explain it far better than I ever could. Uh, uh, hourglass. Let's see, hourglass universe. Let's see if I can find something. Uh, theory. It might not be called. Okay, here we go. No, that's not it. Let's see. Trying to find it. Let's see. Uh, Not Steven Universe. God. I'm not sure what it's called, but at any rate, I'll find the video that delved into it deeper, and I'll put that in the description if you want to know more and actually know what science has to say. But regardless, yes, it's perfectly valid and sound to have a universe that's infinite into the past. You just have to think about it differently than what you're thinking about it. I don't even know if you are thinking about it, to be honest. But yeah, you're wrong again. Yeah, all right.
It had to be run up. So what ran up everything so that it could eventually diminish and go down? You have to say that there must be a creator who brought everything to existence and ran
Nope.
everything up, and now we're seeing a diminishing. And by the way, in the Bible, it talks about this diminishing, that all the world is moaning and groaning under the burden of sin, that the fabric of creation
Eh.
is coming apart. Everything is degenerating, and because of sin, there's death, and death is a degeneration. So
Well, that's not what's going on. It's actually returning to equilibrium. It's not going into more chaos. It's going into less chaos. You're viewing it all ass backwards. So death is not a result of sin. Death is a result of DNA not being able to copy itself correctly, at least for humans.
So as I said, so there's been a running up. So life had been spoken into the universe, and now because of sin, death is destroying, and things are diminishing. Okay. A sound explanation may exist for the explosive birth of our universe, but if it does, science cannot find out what the explanation is. The scientist's pursuit of the past ends in the moment of creation. So we need to understand, well, at the moment of creation, what was? Well, God was, and he's the causative one. Beyond the scientific evidence that shows the universe began, there is a philosophical reason to believe that the world had a starting point.
I don't care about philosophy unless you're going to have a valid and sound argument. That's the logic's the only philosophy I care about. And I guess technically science, there's a science of science needs a philosophy of science, and that I care about that one too. But broadly speaking, I don't, whatever, just whatever.
This argument shows that time cannot go back into the past forever.
Okay, so God can't exist in the past forever then either.
You see, it's impossible to pass through an infinite series of moments.
Wrong. It's completely possible to pass through an infinite series of moments. You do it all the time. Every step you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you, which is now stuck in your head, webmaster. I know you're listening to this. By the way, I'm a turkey. Don't laugh at that. So yeah, no, you're wrong. And then if you were right, then God can never do anything if God is infinite. So
You might be able to imagine passing through an infinite number of dimension points on a line by moving your finger from one end to the other. But time is not dimensionless or imaginary. It is real. Each moment that passes uses up real time that we can't go back to.
I don't know about time being real in that sense because this is actually another thing that we're not too sure about if time is real or not. Or now entropy definitely is, and if we're gonna measure time based on entropy, then fine. Uh, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Everything he says is wrong, including this. So it's not a settled thing on whether or not time is a real thing or just our own perception of things or convenient for us. There's time as far as 24 hours because of the sun, and that's based on a measurement. Uh, but of course, time can dilate based on movement speed. So you can slow time down if you go faster. And if you hit the speed of light, then essentially time becomes meaningless at that moment because you're instantly there wherever there is at the speed of light. Although that itself might take several years to take that trip, from the perspective of the light beam, it's instantaneous. So there isn't time within time, I guess is what I'm saying. That's right, the web expert. There's no time within time.
It is more like moving your finger across an endless number of books in a library. It just keeps on going. Like behind me, I have a library, and it's a never ending one. It just keeps going and going. You would never get to the last book because it's this never ending library of books.
And you don't have to get to the last book. You just have to get to the book that talks about the beginning of Earth and stuff. You're assuming that the last book is the book. There is no last book in an infinite chain of books. This moronic idea of that you have about infinity is completely, well, moronic. You're still moving forward. That's what you don't get. So if you spray paint a book infinitely, in the chain, eventually you hit it. It's not like you have more infinites in front of you. And to say it's infinitely far away also is incoherent. It's not infinitely far away because that itself isn't a number. It has to be a number of books away. It doesn't matter if you had an infinite amount of books before you, because if you're always moving forward, or in this case, always sliding your finger, then you're constantly going plus one, which means you're going to get somewhere at some point when things begin or when things start to change or whatever. So your analogy doesn't work, and like everything else that you've said in this video is completely wrong. That should surprise anybody. Because
Even if you thought you had found the last book, there could always be one more added, then another and another. You can never finish an infinite series of real things. If the past is infinite, which is another way of saying if the universe had always existed without a beginning, then we could never have passed through time to get to today.
Yes, you could, as long as you're moving forward. But if what you say is true, then God cannot traverse the infinite amount of time to get to today. So God is infinitely stuck in the infinity that it exists in if you're right about how infinity works. So God would not be able to do anything ever that affects anything else because it's infinitely in the past as well. But God's timeless, right? Which of course makes it no when at all. And then, but you now you need more special pleading for God, I guess. So yeah, all right.
If the past is an infinite series of moments, and right now is where the series stops, then we would have passed through an infinite series, and that is impossible.
No, it's completely possible. You're moving forward. As long as you're moving forward, you're not adding on to that. So it doesn't matter. That's what you don't get. So stupid. Um, all right, I'm not. Start at any random point on a circle, and you start going around that circle. Eventually, you hit the point that you started at. The circle's infinite, though, but you can still traverse it. So yeah, it's just you have a starting point, but you also don't have a starting point because it's arbitrary where you start in the circle. But there you go. Infinity traversed quite easily.
If the world never had a beginning, then we could not have reached today.
Sure, we could. Well, no, we couldn't. Because if. Wait, what? If the world never had a beginning, then we wouldn't have a world. So, reaching today, yes, we would still reach today, it's just we wouldn't have a world on which to do it. But can't God just make time do whatever the bleep God wants?
But we have reached today. So time must have begun at a particular point in the past, and today has come at a definite time since then.
Eh?
Therefore, the world is infinite. The world is an infinite event after all. It needs a cause for its beginning.
What? The world is an infinite event after all. It needs a cause for the. No, no, no. Look, it's okay when I screw up because I'm live. You're recorded. You have no excuse. You could have edited that to make sense, but you didn't, making you wrong again. This time due to lack of editing. What the bleep is this? What am I watching? Why are you wrong about everything?
So there's two kinds of infinite series.
Oh,
There are
there's two
two kinds
kinds.
of infinite series. One is abstract, and the other is concrete.
Oh,
An
okay.
abstract infinite series is a mathematical infinite. For example, as
Uh
any
huh.
mathematician knows, there are infinite number of points on a line between point A and point B.
Okay.
No matter how short or long the line may be, there's
Yeah.
still point A and point B.
Okay.
While there's an infinite number of abstract mathematical points between two bookends, nevertheless, we cannot get an infinite number of actual books between them, no matter how thin the pages are.
Eh?
Nor does it matter how many feet of distance we place between the bookends. We still
Eh?
cannot get an infinite number of books
Eh?
there.
Yeah,
So
because the infinity isn't a thing, you nitwit.
while abstract mathematical infinite series are possible, actual concrete infinite series are actually not.
Right, because wait, you can't have it both ways. You said there's two types of infinite, an abstract one and then a concrete one. Then you proceed to say that concrete one isn't a thing. So there isn't two sets. Then there's only one. Jeez, please, can't make up your mind on anything. As I said, infinity is a concept, as far as I know. And so you misunderstand how infinity works because of course you do, and well, maybe I misunderstand how it works too, but who knows. But if infinity is a term and it is an abstract idea rather than a concrete one. But if you say, well, there's no such thing as a concrete one, okay, I guess I agree with that. But yeah, that then we can move through infinity quite easily since it's not concrete. If time is infinite, then time is infinite, and that's how it is. I mean, you're fine with your God being infinite, so or always existing, eternally existing. In fact, eternity has more problems than infinity because eternity, well, it's a larger subset of infinity, isn't it? Eternity has no beginning or end. Infinity at least has a start but no end. Oh, whatever. It doesn't matter. You're wrong about everything you've said so far. And none of these are reasons that God exists, and none of this is reasoning. It's all bad logic and bad science. But you're not done, so I guess I'm not done either.
Right. So now that we have seen that the universe needs a cause for its beginning, let's move on to
Uh,
the second form of the
but
argument,
wait,
which is
no,
how the universe needs a cause of
no, but you didn't do that because you failed on every whatever.
existence right now.
What?
The universe needs a cause for an existence, a
What?
continuing existence.
Eh?
Something is keeping us alive and existing right now.
Something is keeping us alive and existing right now. Your body. That's what's doing it. Your body is keeping you alive and existing right now. What the fuck?
We don't just disappear into thin air, right? Something has only
What?
caused us and caused the world to begin,
Eh?
to come into being.
What?
And I'll harken back to Genesis 1 on that point.
Right, you're wrong. Okay, got
So
it.
the universe is continuing and
Yeah.
conserving its existence in the present.
Yeah.
And you can read about Colossians
What?
1:17 and how basically God is upholding everything by the word of his power, and that he's basically his
Okay, so your non-reasoning is to use circular logic to assume that the Bible says what it is true because the Bible said it, and also in this case you require additional things like cherry picking to pick this particular verse out of the Bible, and of course your interpretation of this Bible verse has to be as you said it rather than some other way of looking at it. And also, we don't need God to keep us existing because we have biology that does it quite well and physics. So God's holding together physics and biology, I guess. If you want to believe that, fine, but you don't need God to explain those things, making God not a reasonable conclusion to draw from the fact that we continue to exist. At least, well, we exist for as long as we do, and then we don't. I get everything is wrong. Everything in this video is wrong. Everything you said is wrong. Everything you say is wrong. Also, every PS, everything you said in this video is wrong. Well, not the Bible verses. You got that right. But like everything else is wrong. Anyway, back to my video. To my video that I'm doing on your video. Yeah, alright. Alright, so it's alright, yeah, back to alright, yeah. What was I doing? Alright.
his creation is also sustaining.
Eh?
And God is sustaining his work.
What?
So the world needs both an originating cause and a conserving cause.
No, it
So in a
doesn't.
sense, this question is most basic, and it can be asked in its most basic sense this way: why is there something rather than nothing? And it can be put
Oh,
this way into
goodness.
3 separate points. So here's the first one: finite changing things exist.
Okay. Why is there something rather than nothing? Nothing is impossible. That's why. There's an answer. But why is there God rather than no God?
For example, me or you, I would have to exist to deny that I exist. So either way, I must really exist. And the second point would be that every finite gauging thing must be caused by something else. If it is limited and it changes, then it cannot be something that exists independently of itself. If it existed independently or necessarily, then it would have always existed without any kind of change. And then the third is that there cannot be an infinite regress for these causes. So another way of saying it would be that you can't go on explaining how this finite thing causes this finite thing, which causes this other finite thing, and on and on and on, because that really just puts off the explanation indefinitely and it doesn't explain anything. So if
Oopsie, I accidentally closed it. But yeah, his explanation also doesn't explain anything because you haven't explained anything. God didn't explain any of that stuff. And also, if God is infinite, it also would be subject to these rules. You're just arbitrarily making things up to justify your conclusion. You don't have a valid and sound argument. Your argument is barely valid. You didn't really even offer it in syllogistic form, so I can't really. I would say it's not valid actually, but it's definitely unsound. And you didn't offer us any empirical evidence or refutable test about anything, and it seems like you're just continuously asserting your own conclusion. It's a creation. It's a creation. It needs a creator. It's a creation. It needs a creator. Um, you need more than that. And this is just a broken argument. The cosmological argument has been and continues to be broken completely in full. And you guys, for some reason, you apologists think that the Big Bang helps you. It doesn't. You don't seem to understand the Big Bang. If you're a creationist, you more than likely doubt other areas of science. So I'm not sure why you're fine with the Big Bang when you're not okay with other areas of science. You're inconsistent. I don't like that. But overall, you have a faulty argument that doesn't point to God nor explain God or how God works. And pointing to the Bible isn't a reasonable thing to do until you justify that the Bible is something reasonable itself or something that is valid and sound, which will require its own argument that you also don't have. So you have a bad argument that you've made worse because you didn't even quote the cosmological argument from any like standard source. I don't know why you did that. You kind of like you made your own kind of version of it, so your sloppiness there made it even more broken than it normally is. And then your you didn't edit part of your video when you could have. That was weird. It's just like, and everything you said at every point was wrong. If you think the universe is a bang from the Big Bang, you're wrong about that. You're wrong about causality. You're wrong about, well, like I said, everything that you said, you're wrong about it. I don't know if the universe has or doesn't have a cause or anything like that. And whether it does or doesn't, that doesn't mean that it's God. In order to conclude God, you need to demonstrate God. And that continues to be the problem that the apologists cannot surmount. They can say, well, this points to God, this suggests God, this hints at God, God's put it in your hearts, God's written it in the clouds, whatever, but they can never just say, there is God, here it is, because, well, God isn't a thing that you can point to, because God is more than likely just an idea in our heads and nowhere else. And unless and until we have empirical evidence, repeatable tests, or a valid and sound argument, we should be skeptical of any other conclusion than the one I just made right there. I hope that was clear. I don't know if it was. Let me know in the comments if it was or wasn't clear what I just said. Okay, that's it. I'm done for now. Later. Wee! Next time, hopefully it will be not suck. So I'll see you in not suck. And if you're like, what the bleep is not suck, you'll see.